Spoilers ahead.
Near Dark's an American vampire film that came out at the peak of the 1980s vampire trend. In 1985, Tom Holland gave us Fright Night. And in 1987, Joel Schumacher gave us a little movie called The Lost Boys. Near Dark came out in 1987 as well, and it was Kathryn Bigelow's debut as a director. Fright Night was released to critical acclaim. It's a perfect little blend of comedy and horror. 25 years later, it's still considered an essential film for any vampire horror fans. And the same can be said for Schumacher's Lost Boys. It's as watchable today as it was when I was a kid. It's had far-reaching cultural influence in terms of the depiction of vampires as young hip folks instead of old, dusty, undead aristocrats. And it's a fun movie. And then you've got Near Dark, which in a lot of ways is very similar to Lost Boys. They're both vampire movies. They both featured lead characters who fall for a vampire. Both lead characters become vampires against their will. And ultimately, for both lead characters, salvation lies in family. So why is it so hard to find Near Dark on a streaming service? And why is it next to impossible to find it on a Blu-ray that you can actually afford? Why is it a true cult classic? Has this movie done something wrong? These are all questions that I wrote down earlier that I'm asking into the camera now. But let's see if we can find some answers anyways.
The plot.
The movie starts when Caleb Colton, played by Adrian Pasdar, whom you might know from some other things, but I don't, meets a cute young drifter named May. Caleb makes his move about 40 times, but May's not having it. And then on his 41st attempt, she bites him on the neck and runs away. Old lucky number 41. It's a tad cliche, but whatever. Caleb's truck won't start, so he has to walk home. When the sun comes up, his skin starts to cook. Just as he's nearly stumbled all the way back to the family farm, he's pulled into a motorhome and whisked away. Inside the RV's a gang of vampires. And the craziest one of them, Severin, played by the late great Bill Paxton, would like very much to kill Caleb, but May of all people saves him by revealing that she's already bitten him. The head vampire, Jesse Hooker, played by Lance Henrikson, compromises and allows Caleb to hang out with them for a week to see if he can handle the pace. But Caleb's not into it and he wants to go home and have a shower. So he hops on a bus and heads back to the farm. But a few minutes later, he gets off the bus because he feels like total ass. He finds his way back to May, who opens her wrist for him to make him feel better. On their way to a bar, the gang pauses for a moment to rip off the Lost Boys blatantly, somehow, even though both movies were released in the same year. And once they're inside the bar, Bill Paxton delivers some magic only Bill Paxton could have delivered. In one of the greatest bar fight scenes ever, everyone in the bar ends up dead, except for one lucky fella that Caleb lets escape. So the gang want him dead for risking their safety. But the next morning, Caleb takes one for the team when the cops raid their hotel room, and that makes them all happy again. Back in the real world, Caleb's dad's worried sick, and he's been searching high and low for the caravan of killers, and his searchings led him right to the hotel they're staying in. The child vampire in the group, Homer, played by Joshua John Miller, the creepiest, most annoying child actor to ever hit the screen, who never really grew out of it, and may in fact be a perfectly nice person, but I don't want to find out, bumps into Caleb's sister and decides he wants to turn her into his undead buddy. But Caleb says no, which is really surprising. And while they're arguing about it, Caleb's dad shows up and goes all Dirty Harry, and ends up shooting Jesse, who catches the bullet in his mouth. The door flies open in the confusion and the sun floods in, sending the vampires into retreat mode just long enough to allow Caleb to escape with his family. And with a hospital being out of the question, Caleb's dad performs a blood transfusion between them. Sorry, folks. That happens sometimes with these horror movies. With a hospital being out of the question, Caleb's dad performs a blood transfusion between them. And it works. But things aren't going to end that easily. This is a horror movie, mostly. The vampires come back for Caleb and his sister later that night. May throws the head fake by pretending she wants Caleb back, while the others sneak upstairs to kidnap his sister. And if I was Caleb and May came back for me, I'd be all like,
"Why did you leave?"
Because normally, when a girl tells you she really wants to suck you, let's just write this off as a misunderstanding. Once they've made off with her, Caleb tries to chase them, but his tires have been slashed. So he takes a horse, but Caleb falls off the horse. Bill Paxton's waiting for him when he gets up. The boys wrestle a bit and Caleb ends up in a truck. And then everything goes very Terminator for a while. And sadly, Bill Paxton's killed in a fiery death even the T1 couldn't have survived. Jesse and the gang square off with Caleb, and things get hilarious when one of the surviving vampires misses Caleb with a knife and puts it right into Jesse's mouth. They get away again, and then they catch the sister again, and it's all getting a little bit much at this point. And in a final act of heroism, May breaks out of the car with Caleb's sister and returns her to him safely, before she escapes the sun's damaging UV rays under Caleb's coat. And in my favorite scene of the film, Homer, the annoying kid, tries catching up with them, but he dies. No in-depth analysis necessary, no interpretation of any potential metaphorical symbolism. I wasn't shouting at my screen, "Put your hoodie up," or "Duck under your huge jacket, you idiot," because I didn't want Joshua John Miller saved. I wanted him fried by karma, like Ted Bundy. And with one last kick at the Caleb can, Jesse and his girl take a final run at Caleb. But the sun wins out and the dastardly duo burst into more flames than the exploding truck from Bill Paxton's Terminator scene. A few minutes later, May wakes up in perfect health. She's been given a blood transfusion too, because fuck blood types, right? And there you have it, the plot to Near Dark, which we've already established is very similar to that of The Lost Boys. Let's see if we can figure out why Near Dark enjoyed a much dimmer afterlife in comparison to that of its 1987 counterpart.
The good bits.
The kills in this movie are directly in front of you. They're not implied, they're not 25 short shots composited into one longer one, and they're vicious and animalistic, which makes sense given the vampires doing the killing stopped respecting life decades ago, and this coldness is also a positive for the film. The vampires are very matter-of-fact and nonchalant about tearing people apart and drinking their life juices. This indifference makes them much scarier, for lack of a better word, and that goes a long way towards distinguishing them as non-humans, giving their entirely human in appearance without any contact lenses or prosthetics or even pointy teeth. And finally, I always express respect when filmmakers break new ground instead of following in the footsteps of other filmmakers. And Kathryn Bigelow definitely did that here. These vampires are vampires, but the connection's nominal at best. She did her own thing, and that's almost always the right thing to do. The problem in this particular case is that she hasn't fully thought it through. Her decision to strip away the sparkling glitz creates another significant quandary.
The shite bits.
Near Dark's dusty aesthetics more representational of what a modern vampire's life would be like if they were real. There's no glamour, there's nothing sensual about it, and it's even dangerous for them. And this explains why all the other vampire movies go out of their way to make vampirism cool. Making it cool means you don't have to justify why eternal life would be considered a gift. But Near Dark fails to convince you immortality is something anybody would want. It leaves you wondering who the hell would go more than a few weeks in the back of a van with these people without walking out into the sun on purpose.
The verdict.
So, did Near Dark do anything wrong? No, it's just different. The Lost Boys is stylish, whereas Near Dark is bare bones. Lost Boys is romanticized and enticing and fucking cool. And Near Dark, although competently shot, is none of these things. The set pieces look borrowed from The Wild Bunch, the cast's hands and faces are caked in dirt, and you'd do anything to avoid being bitten by any of them. Not so much because of the undead aspects, but more because an eternity with these specific vampires and their daily routine seems indiscernible from an eternity in actual hell. And who the hell wants that? The Lost Boys was a crowd pleaser. Near Dark is a movie for vampire horror fans. It's that simple. If you want to see it and you can't see it because you can't find a decent copy of it, get in touch. I'll sort you out. Legally, of course. Until next time, folks. It's me, Jonny, from that thing you just watched. If you enjoyed it, go down there and smash me in the face to subscribe. And if you want to watch another thing, there's one right there. Do it!